Today's topic, as you can read, autonomous cloud with Keptn, GitLab, JMeter, and Dynatrace on AKS. We tried to fit in even more acronyms and tool names, but we kind of ran out of space. But what's really cool is that we're not just talking about what we have done on the Keptn side, but really what our users have done. And this is also what the focus of the community webinars are about, seeing how people are implementing Keptn, as opposed to the developer meetings that we have on a weekly basis, where the development team shows what they are working on. These meetings are about our users. And with this, Patrick, I want to say hi to you, to München.
Hi.
Hi. Hopefully it seems the weather is as beautiful as here. It's sunny out there.
Yeah, it's pretty sunny and blue skies, so can't complain here.
Yeah, so we want to make sure we run through this quickly so we can go to the beer gardens, because we are fortunate in this part of the world that the COVID lockdowns have been lifted at least enough that we can enjoy a cool beverage outside.
Yeah, some beer with some distance though.
Exactly. Patrick, maybe do you want to quickly introduce yourself, who you are and who you work for?
Yeah, sure. I'm Patrick Hofmann. I'm a senior consultant at amasol AG. We are a systems integrator based in Munich, and we specialize in everything IT monitoring and IT management. So we have different partners and implement their solutions for our customers, provide services around everything IT monitoring. So I work there in the application performance monitoring field, have been working there for about 7 years. And over the last years, I helped build our Amazon Managed Cloud, what we call it. So we provide managed service offerings for our customers. Yeah, and that's the part where we actually utilize Keptn.
That's perfect, cool. Before I let you jump over to the slides and the presentation, again, a reminder, feel free to put in questions into the question fields. I see the first one already come in, like Julian has already asked whether there are plans to add a login to the Keptn's Bridge. While this is not part of this community webinar today, we're happy to answer this, and Jürgen already answered, yes, this is coming this is already part of the Keptn's 062 release, where you can put the bridge behind a login. So just a reminder, ask questions. Hopefully it's around what we show here, so we can actually leverage the time that we have Patrick here. But if it's anything related to Keptn, put it into the question feature, okay? All right, Patrick, let's jump into the slides, because we have a couple before we go. Exactly. So I think when we sat down, right, we had a couple of things we wanted to highlight. And this is what I asked you kind of to prepare. And I really just want to talk about the agenda and then maybe put in questions as they come along. I'm really interested, and people are asking, why do people use Keptn? What is the real reason behind it? Also, people are always interested in hearing where people are installing Keptn, because Keptn is supported on many different platforms. Then the major part will be the demo that you're given. And then at the end, we also give a little outlook on what you are interested in. And what's also great, you also wrote a blog post about this, and people can obviously jump to that link as well. But yeah, Patrick, if you could lead us through it, that would be awesome.
Sure. Then let's start. So first, a short overview of why we utilize Keptn at Amasol. I have a small quote here. So basically, why we started using it, because it really helps us and enables us to deliver new features and updates to our customers while still maintaining a high standard of quality. So keep that up for our customers. And what we use to do that is the Keptn Quality Gates, actually the feature we utilize here to make sure that actually only good builds make it into production. And actually also Keptn saved us a lot of time there. We estimate around 80%, because we don't need to build manual pipelines for all our deployments, and we can onboard new projects pretty easily without having to write new pipelines for every project we want to onboard here. So that was one of the major benefits we saw in Keptn.
That's cool. So this is also a great justification for the reason why we initially built Keptn, right? It's the pipelines from the past have been great for applications that we built and deployed into the past. More monolithic and then let's say less frequent. And now we're building event-driven microservice applications that we all deploy independently. So we should also think about delivery pipelines being event-driven, independent, like being able to deliver these individual microservices independently and enforcing these quality gates so that we're not deploying something completely stupid and with bad quality into production.
Yeah, and Keptn enables us, it supports a lot of the tools we already used, which we'll take a look at now. And with its message-based architecture, it also helps us just integrate new tools that we may need in the future. It's pretty easily extendable. Yeah.
Cool.
So let's take a look at our tech stack. So what we use for our applications, it's a mean stack. So we use MongoDB for the database. For the backend, it's Express.js running on Node.js. And then we have Angular front end. That's basically the common base for all our web-based applications we deploy. We use GitLab as a code repository. And also we migrated all our continuous integration, which was previously Jenkins. We migrated that to also GitLab as well. So we have one central view for all our code repository and continuous integration pipelines. And then for the deployment, everything basically runs in the cloud. We use Azure. So once the new artifacts and containers are built, we push them to an Azure Container Registry. And then we have a Kubernetes cluster with the Azure Kubernetes service, where for one, our Keptn instance runs, and also all our applications are deployed. So for the deployment, we utilize the Helm service that comes with Keptn to automatically deploy our new versions. And that's actually pretty easy. We weren't utilizing Helm before we switched to Keptn. But if you already have your Kubernetes YAML files for all your deployments, it's basically just rearranging them a bit to fit the Helm architecture. And then you can just keep on going and don't have to adapt very much to use the Helm service here for deployments.
Yeah. So one question, can you repeat this? You said you already had Helm charts before?
I know we hadn't had any Helm charts before, so we weren't using Helm, but it only took maybe 15 minutes per service to convert the existing files we already had that we were deploying on Kubernetes to the structure for Helm charts. So that's a really easy change to do.
Very cool. And then we also heard earlier from Jürgen that with the next Keptn version, we are moving from Helm 2 to Helm 3, which will make things also much easier. And it's also a great step forward. Yeah.
Then we use Nginx and Cert Manager as our ingress to have easy HTTP certificates. You don't have to manage anything there. And for testing, we utilize JMeter to do the functional and load tests. And we also use the JMeter services comes with Keptn. So we don't have to deploy any runoff or anything there. We just write the load test scripts, add them with a GitOps approach to our repository we already have. And Keptn then automatically pulls them and executes them with every new artifact we want to deploy. And then for the monitoring, we use Dynatrace. It's automatically deployed on a cluster with the one agent operator, so also pretty easy there to get it rolled out. And everything we deploy, every new service we deploy is automatically monitored with Dynatrace. And we can then utilize all the metrics we have there in the quality gates from Keptn's Lighthouse service to actually define the SLOs and SLIs we pull from Dynatrace and have some quality gates that only the good builds make it to production.
Very cool. And also I want to say thanks to you because the Nginx ingress, I think that's also what you were kind of asking for from our team when we do a Keptn install, that we can leverage an existing ingress that you already had in place instead of us always, installing a certain ingress.
Yes, I just heard in the community meeting that there is the beta version of it is out and I can test it next week. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some feedback next week on that.
Perfect.
Okay, then I would say let's jump directly into the live demo and take a look at what Keptn looks like in our environment. So Keptn comes with it's called the Keptn Bridge. It's basically an overview of all your Keptn workflows. So at the top, you can select your project. That's our self-service, our user management portal I have selected here currently. You get an overview of all the stages. For that, we have a development and a production stage into which we deploy. And then you have an overview of all the services. So for that specific application, we have a database, the MongoDB database, a front end, and a back end. And then if we expand one of the services, we see all the recent Keptn workflow runs, all the deployments we did. And if we select one on the right side, and we get all the informations that Keptn has about that run. So every box we see here is one event that Keptn created. So it started with the configuration change that we pushed, that there was a new artifact we want to deploy. The Helm service automatically deploys that new artifact, and the JMeter service automatically starts some tests against it. They're pretty quick. After 2 minutes, they are finished. And then the Lighthouse service automatically pulls all those metrics we want for our quality gates from Dynatrace and does an evaluation. So there are basically two things we need to define for the quality gates. We have SLIs, so service level indicators, the metrics we want to measure. So for this service, we look at the response time for the slowest 5% of our users. We look at the median response time, and we want to look at the error rate to gauge how the new service is doing. And then to evaluate that, we define SLOs, so service level objectives that every new artifact has to meet in order for the deployment to be successful. Those SLOs are defined in a pretty easy YAML format. We can actually take a look at it here. So for every objective we have, we can define a criteria on when a build should pass. So in this example, everything below 100 millisecond absolute value will be fine. And we can also add a warning threshold if we want a warning and when the build will still pass, but it may be critical. Everything below between 100 and 300 milliseconds will be viewed as critical. So those are absolute values, but we can also add relative values. So we can tell Keptn to compare actually the last few build results. In that case, we do that for the last 10 builds. And if the difference, the relative difference is above 200% in this example, it will also fail or warn us on that build.
That's pretty cool. It's great that you're using and combining all of these capabilities, right? Not only a single comparison against a static threshold, but also dynamic against multiple previous builds. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then for every SLO we have defined here, we can give it a weight. And that weight is used to actually calculate a final score, a total score, if that build should now fail or if it should pass. And then we can just set a simple percentage value for the whole build passing or for the whole build getting a warning. Yeah, and that's basically all we have to define. And then we get a pretty easy overview over the last build. So every corner here is one build. And see the status, did the SLIs we have defined, did they meet the SLO? Orange, did it get a warning or did it fail completely, for example? Yeah, and then if the evaluation is successful, if we scroll down a bit, maybe that's just.
We always show the full payload, which is something, one of the improvements that will come. I mean, it's great because you see what's happening behind the scenes in Keptn, but it's also something that most, let's say, just end users that don't care about the integrations with Keptn, what's happening underneath is not that useful. That's why we are also, I think, going to put this somewhere else in the future, but it's still obviously, it's great to have the raw data there too.
Especially if you're just getting started and for troubleshooting, you can just take a look at the event right here, why it failed, and you don't have to look into any log files. But basically right here, our evaluation was successful. So Keptn automatically sends another configuration change event, and then the build is deployed to production. So we see it switches to the production stage here, and then starts the whole thing at the beginning, deploys the new version into production, runs some tests. Currently for production, we are not running any tests there. We have manual synthetic tests in Dynatrace that are running and evaluating the production build. But that will be one of our next steps to actually include the data we get from those tests into Keptn here as well, and do an evaluation based on other tests like the synthetic tests we do, and get that feedback into Keptn as well if the version in production is running fine.
So that's actually cool to hear. So you're using, in production, you're using synthetic tests from Dynatrace to check the availability.
Yes.
Have you seen the Keptn Dynatrace synthetic service that Christian Heckelmann wrote?
Yeah, I've taken a look at it already, and that's one of the next things I want to implement here to get to get it integrated.
Yeah, because for those people that don't know, one of our contributors, he wrote an additional Keptn service that is listening to deployments and then can automatically create or manage synthetic tests. So every time Keptn deploys into an environment, let's say production, then this service will take care of making sure that there's a synthetic test also created from different regions. So you have true SLA monitoring as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So then we can take a look how everything starts. So right now we are building everything in our GitLab CI solution.
Mm-hmm.
And then we still trigger the builds manually via the Keptn CLI because we want to do manual approval before we push anything into production. But as we will take a look at later, Keptn will support that use case in the next version, and then we can fully integrate it. But let me switch to our GitLab. So here we have our GitLab pipeline runs. I just built a new version before the webinar started, so we can take a look at that. So now with only having the CI in GitLab, the pipelines are actually pretty easy. We have a short preparation. So in our office, we have a Dynatrace UFO to visualize the build state. So the first thing we do is send a short web request, and then the UFO will start flashing and show that a new build is running. And then we will build our new artifact. So we only build the parts that change. In that case, I only changed something in the backend. So we only built the backend here. Run some simple unit tests in the pipeline. And then we build a Docker image from the new artifact and push it to our Azure Container Registry. And then, of course, we notify the Dynatrace UFO. If the pipeline run was successful, then it will blink green again, or it will go red if it failed.
And this would be then the case where you would now, like with 07, and I know we see the upcoming thing, what you're planning with 07, but this is where you could then automatically trigger Keptn to run the pipeline from there into dev and then into production.
Yes, basically we use the same feature, and to the request we do to the UFO, we would just add another simple API call to Keptn to tell it to deploy the new artifact. For now, we can do that manually. So we can just take a look here at the Docker build, which version was actually built. In that case, the new artifact had the version 0.9.104. And now we can deploy that version. So you can do it via the API call, or you can also pretty simple do it via the Keptn CLI. So there's a simple CLI command to deploy it. We can do that now. So we can tell Keptn to send a new artifact event. We tell it which project, in this case, our self-service portal. We tell it the service, this is our backend we want to deploy. And then we have to give it the image name we want to deploy and the new version. In this case, it's the 104 is the newest version we deployed. And then we can just trigger the deployment and tell the Helm service to deploy a new artifact. And now if we switch to the bridge again, in a few seconds, we should see the new build coming up here.
That's pretty cool. And just because somebody's asking, the reason why you're not calling it automatically right now from GitLab is because Keptn will deploy it in dev, will run the tests, and in case dev is good, it will promote it into production. And you still want to control that process.
Yes, I currently we don't want every build we do. So for every build we get a new image, but we don't want every image we build to go into a dev and go into production. We want to control manually there what goes into production. But once we decide to push into production, we do what we did now. We send the event, and from there, Keptn will do everything automatically. It will start now, did the deployment here in dev, and if everything is fine again with the test, it will automatically deploy to production.
Perfect, that's awesome. Works as advertised. Awesome. Hey, and I know you probably have your script, your demo. I mean, but I'm sorry that I interrupt you all the time.
No, it's fine. We have a few minutes now anyway while the Keptn workflow is running.
Yeah. So because you have Keptn, and Keptn, is using Dynatrace to pull the metrics for the quality gate, but Keptn is also pushing events to Dynatrace.
Yeah, let's take maybe a look at that while it's running. So the first events from that run should already be here. So if you switch to our Dynatrace instance, we have a simple, basically a Keptn overview dashboard that shows us our 2 stages. dev and production, shows us the services running there, the current throughput, if there are any errors and the response time.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see the browser monitors we run here against our production environment, as everything is available there.
Uh-huh.
Now here, let's jump into the backend service that we just deployed. So we have the front end and the backend. Those are the two services. Currently, we are deploying the backend. So let's jump to that. And I did a few deployments today already. So we have 70 new events. And if we expand them a bit, we see, so for the current event, we see here a new deployment has started. We get quite a few metadata here. We see, for example, the image version that we deployed, the Keptn context, so a unique ID for every run, so we can link it always to the Keptn bridge and see what's going on here. Then now we have the next information that the deployment, that the tests also started, so it will also send events for tests starting. And then just if we take a look at the last run, once the tests are done, it will send an event for that. And will actually send an event if the quality gate we evaluated, if it passed or not, and if it will promote to the next stage, or if it will stop here.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing, we do not only have that in the events, but if we take a look at all the requests of the service, so for example, here we have an overview of all the requests, we will also get that information here. So we always have the reference when there was a deployment or if there were any tests started or stopped. So if you are analyzing a graph, you will always see, oh yeah, there was a deployment here. Maybe the drop or the error rate increase here has to do with that deployment. You always have that reference.
It seems you had some bad deployments earlier, huh?
Yeah, I had some issues earlier. Yeah, and then we also utilize, as I said, we utilize JMeter for the tests. We also pull out some metadata there. So for all the tests we are running, Dynatrace is called request attributes. So the information like the name of the load test we are running, there's a performance test and always the ID of the test that is running. So you can filter for a certain test. Or if you want to analyze a certain step that is failing, we import the step names from the load test. We always have that here, and you can filter if, for example, something is going on wrong with the login. You can just really easy focus only on the requests for the login or only for the login for the last build to analyze them if something is going wrong. Yeah, to see what's going actually going wrong here.
Very cool.
So we can jump back to Keptn and see. Yeah, the tests were finished successfully, and now it started to retrieve all the metrics. And probably in another minute, we should see that the evaluation is done, and hopefully the build pass.
That's very cool. The other question that I had, and I'm not sure if you have it available, but for folks that haven't seen this before, in order to define the process, right? The way we architected Keptn is that we are separating the concerns of the actual process and then the tooling that is actually doing things, and it's all connected via events.
Yeah.
And maybe, yeah, I mean, I should see that the evaluation done just came in. But what I wanted to point to is the shipyard file. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. So yeah, the evaluation is actually done. So it was successful. We reached all our SLOs and we'll now continue deploying that to production. And while it's doing that, let's take a look at the shipyard file. I think I have that open here.
You may want to zoom in a little bit. That would be great.
Yeah, I think that is the right one here actually. So let me close the terminal and zoom in here a bit. And then let's take a look at the shipyard file. So the shipyard file is basically where we define the different stages. So right now we had development and production as a stage here, but you can easily just add additional stages and then the Keptn will go through all of them in order and deploy them. So what you define for every stage is a deployment strategy. Currently, we do direct deployment, so the Helm servers will just replace the currently running version. Once we have the Nginx ingress in place, once that is supported, we will be able to switch to, if I say, more advanced deployment strategies. So you could do blue-green deployments to have two versions running and then switching over, or you could also do canary deployments and just switch over a certain number of users to see if your new version is actually performing well with production traffic.
Mm.
And
Maybe, maybe one word here, because you just mentioned blue-green deployments, and you're waiting for our capability to reuse your Nginx for the blue-green deployments. Keptn can already do blue-green and canaries, but we're using Istio right now. And like in your case, you already have an ingress. You don't want to use Istio for that. That's why you're still holding off on that capability.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It would be still possible if you just utilize Istio that Keptn actually comes with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we can define a test strategy as well. So functional or performance tests. Basically, functional just runs a short test to see if the new artifact is running properly, and then the performance tests will execute the load test with JMeter that runs a bit longer and puts a bit more load in it, so we can actually evaluate our quality gates. And you could simply add a few lines here. For example, if you also want a staging environment in between there, set the deployment strategy, set the test strategy, and for the next artifact, Keptn would also automatically deploy to the new environment. So that's pretty easy.
Very cool.
And that repository we have open here, basically, as we said already, Keptn follows a GitOps approach. So all the files for Keptn are stored in a Git repository, and you can simply add or change them here. So for example, we have here our SLO file we talked about with all the metrics. So if I want to change something, I simply change it in the repository, commit the change, and for the next artifact, it will take the new numbers into account.
So that means when you set up Keptn initially, you specified a remote repository, an upstream repo, and that's the upstream repo?
Yeah, that's right. We are using upstream repo in our GitLab. So we can also edit the files directly in GitLab or take a look there with the upstream repository.
Pretty cool. Awesome. Okay. Now, did the build make it into production safely or not?
Let's see. I think, yeah, it looks like it made it into production. So we can just check if we check our development. So we were running version 102 before. If we refresh it now, probably we need to log in again. Actually, log in again. If we go to production, we see we are now running version 104 in production, and I added a small greeting. It was a change in version to the Keptn community. So it made it successfully to production and is working here.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that was the quick overview. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, I think one question. So can you repeat again on which environment you run this? I think Kubernetes. I think it's about the Kubernetes.
Yeah, so we are running that on an Azure Kubernetes service cluster. So we have one cluster. It's actually not too big. It's 2 nodes with, I think, 16 GB of RAM. So it's a smaller cluster, but it's still easily can handle Keptn and maybe 5-6 services or projects we have deployed there currently.
Another question, and I'm not sure if this makes, obviously every question makes sense, but who is in your organization is responsible for the tooling like this?
So basically, currently we have developers who are developing the applications, and I'm the one who's responsible for all the tooling. We started with Keptn maybe 3 or so months ago. So currently I do all the tooling, but once we have set it up, we have a finished setup, let's say, we plan also to give that to our developers, because we are a pretty small team. We don't have that many developers, so it's actually not that hard to handle for us. And as I mentioned before, in Keptn, it's pretty easy to manage. So onboarding a service in Keptn, it's actually not that complex.
Yeah, and it's a one-time thing, and you can even automate that also from the pipeline. So stuff that I've done from Jenkins in some of my work is from the Jenkins CI pipeline. I just make sure that there is a Keptn project, there's a Keptn service, and if it's not, I just automate that you can automate the whole thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, once you have Keptn up and running, just onboarding additional services is pretty easy.
Yeah. One more question, and again, this could be it's an organizational question again. You showed the SLIs and SLOs. who do you think is going to be responsible for defining them? Is this going to be you because you are kind of the platform owner, or is this something where you think the developers will do it?
Right now, it's me as the platform owner, but yeah, the goal would be to have the developers actually define those because they know how fast their code can run and what's a realistic value to actually achieve. But we also plan to utilize Dynatrace for that, right? We have all the monitoring data on how fast it is performing in production and what is a realistic value that we can currently achieve, and we can utilize that in our static thresholds.
Mm-hmm. Two more questions. They are kind of related. With which Keptn version did you start, and on which Keptn version are you right now?
So we started with 0.5 it was, I think, and now we are on the newest version, so 0.6.2.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do one manual update, but that was actually pretty easy. And for the last two versions in 0.6.0, there have been automatic updates, and it really was just running two commands from the documentation. It updates by itself, and I haven't had any issues with the updates yet.
Yeah, Florian Bacher, who is, I think, responsible for that, he did a great job in making the upgrade as smooth as possible.
The upgrade process is very as smooth as it can be, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's it for now. Maybe some questions are coming in later on, but I think we want to maybe wrap it up with a slide or two that we have.
Sure. Let me switch to the...
Exactly. That's always the thing with,
yeah.
You always get started somewhere.
Oh, one back. Okay.
One back. Cool. Do you want to talk about it, or shall I talk about it?
Yeah, sure, I can talk about it. So that's our outlook, what we said before. Currently, we start the deployment to Keptn manually. And what we are really looking forward to is the new feature called Delivery Assistant that will come with the next Keptn version 0.7. And that will allow us to automatically from our GitLab pipeline push the new artifact event to Keptn so it gets deployed. And then we can still have manual approval between the stages. So as we see here, for every stage, we will see what version is currently running in which environment, and it will tell you when they're out of sync. So when there's a newer version in dev that hasn't been promoted to staging yet, for example, and then you can manually approve it, and only then it will get deployed to the next stage. But you can iterate as fast as you want, for example, in a development environment, and only hit the change to production when you really want to make a deployment there.
Yeah. So I think the cool thing, also what you said, right? If your developers are constantly making changes, your GitLab pipeline runs, builds a new container, it automatically gets pushed into dev. The test will be executed, the quality gates are evaluated, but then let's say the release manager or whatever, whoever that's going to be, can say, hey, I have 5 new builds in dev. The 2 of them failed, but the latest 2 are good, and we decide to put, let's say, 1 of them into production.
Yeah, that's right. We can iterate fast in the development environment and then choose the time when all the features are there and we want to go to production.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and as we said, this is coming in 0.7. Timeframe is, I believe, hopefully I'm not making any false promises, but end of next month, as I believe, or in June timeframe. So that's going to be really cool.
And I think one question earlier was about the authentication for the bridge. So that's, as Andi mentioned, in the newest version, 0.6.2, and we already utilized that. So it's pretty simple to enable that. Then you have basic authentication. You can expose your bridge, and you can just enter the basic authentication credentials to gain access.
Very cool. All right, Patrick, maybe just last slide before we wrap it up. This is something that we are an open source project, and we believe we can make an impact with what we're doing because we believe we really solve a problem. What's important is that we get support from the community. One way of supporting us is following us obviously on social media, but also star our projects on GitHub, whether it's Keptn or some of the sandbox projects. Also join our Slack channel. Either you can find the Slack channel link and also all other things on Keptn community. I think for Slack there's now even an easier. It's slack.keptn.sh that also redirects you to the login page. Yeah.
And if you're using Keptn already and haven't checked it out, the second link here, the Jenkins servants that Andi wrote, we also utilized it in our environment. You should check that out. It's pretty great. So it makes it easier to modify the load patterns. You can specify different load patterns for different environments pretty easy. And yeah, make the Jenkins the JMeter service even easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's see if there is anything else. Not right now. Well, folks, if anything comes up later on, you know how to get a hold of us, you know how to find us. The recording, thanks to Jürgen, will be up soon on the Keptn YouTube channel. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time and for doing all this for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and now go off to the beer gardens and have a beer.
Thank you,
Okay.
Andy.
Tschüss. Servus.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.